The suburban neighborhood of Chicago was wrapped in autumn twilight. Caroline Foster picked up the mail from her doorstep as she returned home from the hospital. Among the letters, an invitation printed on expensive paper caught her eye. It was from her sister Vanessa, the younger one of the two. Caroline had often been compared to her sister. This had been happening since childhood. Caroline was serious and responsible, raised to meet her parents' expectations. On the other hand, Vanessa, 5 years younger, was bright, active, and full of confidence. Their parents often told Caroline, "You should learn from Vanessa." "I'm home," Caroline called out, and 7-year-old Aiden came running from the hallway. "Mom! Today I drew a dinosaur at school. The teacher said mine was the best." Caroline smiled as she stroked her son's head. "That's wonderful. Will you show me?" From the kitchen, she could see 10-year-old Emma doing her homework, and her husband Jason had just returned from work, loosening his tie while making coffee. A perfect family portrait was right before her eyes. Caroline was proud of the home she had built during 15 years of marriage. "Any interesting mail?" Jason asked. Caroline picked up the invitation. "It's from Vanessa." "Probably." She opened the envelope and was momentarily speechless. "She's engaged. To Richard Grant." "The developer?" Jason asked, looking somewhat surprised. "He's a big shot in the industry, isn't he?" Caroline nodded. Richard Grant was a successful real estate developer, well known in local business circles. She continued reading the invitation. "The wedding is in 3 months. It looks like our whole family is invited." That night, after the children were in bed, Caroline was looking at the invitation in their bedroom. Vanessa always seemed to be one step ahead. Graduating top of her class from law school, working at a prestigious law firm, and now marrying a successful businessman. Jason came out of the shower and noticed her expression. "What are you thinking about?" "Just Vanessa. Everything always works out for her." "Caroline," Jason sat beside her. "You have a wonderful life. A good job, lovely children, and me," he winked at her. Caroline smiled. "I know. But what?" "Nothing," she said. "I'm just tired." The next morning, Caroline called Vanessa. "Congratulations on your engagement." "Thank you." Vanessa's voice was filled with excitement. "I can't believe it. He's perfect. You'll help with the wedding preparations, right? We're sisters after all." Caroline smiled. "Of course. Just tell me what you need." "Wonderful. Lunch tomorrow. I want to tell you all the details." Caroline checked her work schedule. "That sounds good. I'm looking forward to it." After hanging up, Caroline felt mixed emotions. She was genuinely happy for her sister, but at the same time, she was struck by a strange feeling. She reflected on her own marriage. 15 years ago, she and Jason had married for love. The first few years were passionate, but after the children were born, their life had settled into a routine. Nothing was particularly wrong, but the thrill had faded. At lunch the next day, Vanessa was radiant. She shared every detail from how she met Richard to their engagement, and Caroline listened attentively. "Caroline, I've always wanted to be like you," Vanessa suddenly said. "Always your parents' pride." Caroline was surprised. "Me? But you're much more successful." Vanessa shook her head. "In my career, maybe. But you have a happy family. That's what I've always wanted." Those words made Caroline pensive. The sister she had been envying was actually envying her. Ironically, she had recently begun feeling something was off in what she thought was her perfect family. Several weeks passed, and Caroline was helping with wedding preparations between work and family responsibilities. One night, Aiden said to her before bedtime, "Mom, I don't like Uncle Richard." "Why not?" Caroline asked, kissing his forehead.
Do you know some people earn over $10,000 a month just by posting Reddit stories on YouTube? No face, no voice, just a laptop. I do it too, link below if you're curious.
"Because he always hides his phone when he sees me. Like he's doing something bad." Caroline chuckled softly. "I'm sure that's not the case. Uncle Richard is a busy businessman who deals with important information. It's just your imagination." Aiden didn't seem convinced but said nothing more. Caroline told herself not to worry too much about a child's intuition. It was probably just stress from the wedding preparations. When she got home, Jason was talking on his cell phone in the living room. When she entered, he quickly hung up. "Who were you talking to?" Caroline asked. "Oh, just a work call," Jason answered, looking somewhat uneasy. "Sorry I'm late. The project is running behind." Caroline had noticed that her husband had been coming home late more often lately. Sometimes, he would go out on weekends for emergency work meetings. She told herself it was just the stress of Vanessa's wedding making her nervous. Their family was happy. At least, that's what she wanted to believe. The day before the wedding, the hotel lobby was bustling with preparations for the rehearsal dinner. Caroline had just finished a final meeting with the hotel staff. The children were supposed to be playing in the hotel pool. As she crossed the lobby, something caught her eye through the large windows facing the parking lot. Aiden was in the parking lot, prowling around Richard's luxury car. He was peering into the car, as if looking for something. Caroline hurried outside. "Aiden! What are you doing?" She approached her son. "You shouldn't be looking into other people's cars without permission." Aiden turned around, looking startled. "Mom, I was just checking something." "Checking what?" Aiden kicked the ground with his toe. "Nothing," he mumbled. Caroline was puzzled but didn't pursue it further. "It's time to get out of the pool and take a shower. We have the rehearsal dinner tonight." That evening, the rehearsal dinner went smoothly, with relatives from both families enjoying a pleasant time together. However, during the dinner, Caroline noticed Jason checking his phone several times and once leaving the table to make a call. When he returned, she asked, "Is everything okay?" "Oh, just a small problem at work," Jason answered lightly. "I need to take care of it tonight." "I'm sorry, Caroline." "Tonight? But the wedding is tomorrow." "I know. But it's an emergency. I'll be back in a couple of hours." Caroline was disappointed but didn't argue. Jason was an executive at a construction company, in a position of responsibility. She showed understanding as usual. "All right. I'll take the kids back to the room first." Back in the hotel room, Aiden was quieter than usual. Emma was playing a game on her tablet, but Aiden sat on the bed, his chin resting on his small knees, deep in thought. "What's wrong, Aiden?" Caroline sat next to her son. "When is Dad coming back?" "As soon as he finishes work. It's an important day tomorrow, so go to sleep early." Aiden was silent for a moment but suddenly asked, "Is Uncle Richard a good person?" Caroline was surprised. "Of course. Why do you ask?" "Because." Aiden hesitated. "Never mind." Caroline kissed her son's forehead. "Don't overthink things. Come on, let's brush your teeth and get ready for bed." After the children had fallen asleep, Jason still hadn't returned. Caroline called his cell phone several times, but only got his voicemail. Around midnight, the door finally opened, and Jason came in. "I'm sorry I'm so late," he said in a low voice. The problem was more complicated than I expected. Caroline looked at her husband's face. He seemed tired but also somewhat uneasy. Is everything all right? Yes, we managed to resolve it, Jason said, loosening his tie. Why are you still up? You should go to sleep. I was waiting for you, Caroline said. But anxiety was spreading in her heart. The morning of the wedding day, the hotel was bustling. Caroline was dressed in her bridesmaid dress, helping Vanessa get ready in her room. Her sister was dressed in a pure white wedding gown and looked so happy she might burst into tears at any moment. I can't believe this day has come, Vanessa said, looking out the window. Caroline, thank you so much. This day wouldn't have come without you. Caroline hugged her sister. If you're happy, that's all that matters. The ceremony proceeded perfectly. Smiles were everywhere, surrounded by a festive atmosphere. However, throughout the ceremony, Caroline noticed her husband exchanging glances with her sister several times. At one point, it even looked like Jason winked at Vanessa. Was it just a friendly gesture, or? Caroline thought her imagination was running wild. But when she glanced back, she saw Aiden taking out his smartphone during the ceremony and filming something. He normally didn't show much interest in technology. She signaled with her eyes for him to put the phone away, but Aiden just looked at her for a moment, then continued. As the reception began and toasts and speeches were underway, Caroline saw Vanessa heading to the restroom. Thinking she might need help as her sister, she also got up. When she stepped into the hallway, an astonishing sight greeted her. As Vanessa came out of the restroom, Jason was waiting for her. After a brief conversation, Jason placed his hand on Vanessa's arm and whispered something. The expression on their faces suggested this was more than just a conversation between in-laws. Caroline hid behind a wall and watched the scene. Her heart was pounding wildly. Vanessa and Jason walked away in different directions, and Caroline returned to the dance floor on trembling legs. Something was wrong. But this was her sister's special day. She pretended not to notice and forced a smile. After dinner, when the dancing began, Caroline returned to the table and noticed Aiden was unusually restless, checking his phone repeatedly. What's wrong? She asked. Aiden looked up at his mother and answered in a small voice, I'll tell you later. His eyes showed a heavy determination that didn't suit a 7-year-old child. Although Caroline felt anxious, she said, okay, and stroked her son's head. On the reception dance floor, the first dance of the bride and groom had just ended. Vanessa was radiant in her white dress, and Richard looked at her with love in his eyes. The MC took the microphone and called for a dance by the bride's sister and her partner. Next, we have a dance by the bride's sister, Caroline Foster, and her husband, Jason. Caroline stood up and headed to the dance floor with Jason. Her husband placed one hand on her waist and took her hand with the other. The music began to play, and they started to dance slowly. You look beautiful, Jason said softly. That dress suits you. Caroline tried to smile, but her heart was uneasy. Thank you. Jason pulled her closer. Is something bothering you? No, nothing, she lied. From the corner of her eye, she could see Vanessa talking with another guest. She was glowing. Seeing her sister truly happy, Caroline felt guilty. Her suspicions might just be paranoia. Maybe there was nothing between Jason and Vanessa. She was probably overthinking things. When the dance ended, Caroline returned to the table. There she found Aiden waiting for her. His small face was tense with nervousness, and he was clutching her smartphone in both hands. Mom, we need to go. Right now, Aiden whispered, grabbing her hand. Around them, guests were chatting happily, and music was playing loudly. Caroline smiled, trying not to lose her composure in front of her son, despite her confusion. Why? Aiden quietly took out his smartphone. Look at this. When Caroline looked at the screen, she saw a photo of Jason and Vanessa talking intimately in the hotel lobby, holding hands. The date was from the day before the wedding. In that moment, Caroline froze, the blood draining from her face. As she swiped through the screen, more photos of the two appeared one after another. The two embracing in the hotel hallway, talking in a car. I borrowed Emma's tablet, and a message from Dad came in, Aiden explained in a low voice. I opened it by mistake, and there were lots of pictures of Dad and Aunt Vanessa. Caroline gasped. Aiden, you. I'm sorry, Mom, tears welled up in Aiden's eyes. But I knew Dad was doing something bad. Poor Uncle Richard. Caroline came to her senses and hugged her son. You didn't do anything wrong. Thank you for telling Mom. Aiden continued, yesterday, when we arrived at the hotel, I took photos with Emma's tablet because Dad was talking to Auntie in the lobby. Dad saw me and tried to hide something. Caroline held the smartphone with trembling hands and looked at the photos appearing one after another. The last photo showed Vanessa handing some document to Jason. And then, the messages. Caroline scrolled through and read their conversation. It was clear their relationship had been going on for several years. Even more shocking, Richard seemed to be unaware of their relationship. Mom, Dad, and Auntie are doing something bad. Poor Uncle Richard. Let's go home, Mom, Aiden pleaded. Caroline's head was in chaos. 15 years of marriage, 2 children, and trust as a family. Everything was about to collapse. And her sister. The person she trusted most. There had been competition since they were young, but she never imagined betrayal. Around them, the reception continued. Laughter, toasts, music. But to Caroline's ears, it sounded like distant noise. She was in a daze, unable to bear the contrast between the celebratory mood around her and her own crumbling world. Aiden took her hand again. Mom, are you okay? Caroline came back to her senses and looked into her son's eyes. She was moved by her son's courage, who, with his small body, carried adult secrets and tried to do the right thing. It was time to make a decision. Aiden, thank you for showing me this. You're a brave and honest child, she hugged her son. But we can't leave right away. First, I need to tell Richard the truth. Uncle Richard. Aiden's eyes widened. Yes. He has the right to know the truth. This is an adult problem, but thanks to you, I can do the right thing. Caroline took a deep breath and resolved to find the groom, Richard, with the photographic evidence. Hiding the traces of tears on her face, she stood up. Holding Aiden's small hand, she said, let's go together. They pushed through the crowd, beginning to search for Richard. Caroline and Aiden found Richard in a corner of the reception hall. He was talking with several business associates. Caroline took a deep breath and gathered her courage. Richard, could I speak with you for a moment? She said, trying to appear as calm as possible. It's important. Richard seemed to sense something from her expression. Of course, he apologized to those present and walked over to Caroline. What's wrong? Is there a problem? Caroline placed her hand on Aiden's shoulder and said, let's talk outside. The three of them left the reception hall and headed to the hotel garden. The night air was cold, and music and laughter could be heard from a distance. In a quiet corner, Caroline faced Richard. I have something to tell you. It's very painful, but... She continued, choosing her words carefully. Aiden discovered something. She took out Aiden's smartphone and showed it to Richard. Please look at this. Richard took the smartphone and looked at the photos on the screen. His expression gradually changed. First confusion, then understanding, and finally pain and anger. He swiped through the photos one after another. "How long?" he asked in a hoarse voice. "I don't know," Caroline answered honestly. "Aiden found it by accident. He was trying to do the right thing." Richard exhaled quietly and returned the smartphone to Caroline. He seemed at a loss for words. "I don't know how long it's been going on, but I thought you had the right to know the truth," Caroline said. Richard, though shocked, maintained a certain calmness. "Actually, I felt something was off," he confessed. "Vanessa deleting messages frequently, sudden work schedules, but I had no evidence." He looked at Aiden and gently stroked his head. "Thank you for being brave enough to tell us, Aiden." At that moment, a voice came from behind Caroline. "What are you doing?" Turning around, she saw Vanessa and Jason standing in the garden. A look of confusion was on Vanessa's face. Jason seemed momentarily frozen. His eyes were directed at the smartphone in Aiden's hand. "What are you all talking about?" Vanessa asked again. She seemed to notice something was wrong from Richard's expression. Richard said quietly but firmly, "The truth seems to have come to light." He pointed to the smartphone. "I didn't expect to find out about you and him on our wedding day." The color drained from Vanessa's face. "What are you talking about?" Jason stepped forward, trying to explain. "Richard, this is a misunderstanding. We were talking about work." "Enough," Caroline interrupted. Her voice was trembling. 15 years of marriage, 2 children, and trust as a family, you two betrayed all of that. Vanessa reached out as if to snatch the smartphone, but Richard took it first and looked at the screen. It displayed messages between the two. "Can we meet tonight?" "I told Richard the first have a meeting," Richard read aloud. "So this is the meeting you were talking about." Silence fell. Aiden was holding Caroline's hand tightly. Suddenly, Vanessa broke down in tears. "No. It's not like that." "What is it like?" Caroline asked. "Why, with my husband." Vanessa suddenly exploded in anger towards Caroline. "You were always superior. Parents' love, good grades, perfect family. I was always in your shadow. Jason was the only one who truly understood me." Caroline was speechless. While she had always envied her sister, had her sister been envying her? Still, that was no reason to take her husband. Richard quietly declared, "The wedding is cancelled. I'll apologize to the guests for today." His voice was cold. "A home cannot be built on lies." Jason finally spoke up. "Caroline, please listen," he pleaded. "We just..." "Enough," Caroline said calmly. "Our marriage is over. For the children's sake, leave quietly tonight." Aiden looked up at his father. Confusion and sadness appeared on his small face. Caroline took Aiden's hand and said, "Let's go get Emma and go home." Before they left, she turned to Vanessa. "A real family doesn't betray each other, they support each other. You betrayed me, but I can't hate you. Just don't come into my life again." She left the garden with Aiden. Behind them, Richard was still saying something to Vanessa and Jason, but Caroline didn't look back. The road ahead would be difficult, but she knew that building a new life based on truth would be much better than living in a lie. 6 months later, in a newly built suburban neighborhood of Chicago. In front of a brand new red brick house, Caroline was unloading luggage from her car. The divorce proceedings had finally been completed last month, and she had begun a new life with her children. "Aiden, Emma. Bring your bags," she called from the entrance. The children hurried over, each carrying a small bag into the house. They had just returned from a weekend visit with their father. Caroline had begun working part-time as a counselor, using the psychology degree she already had. Her job helping people with family relationship problems allowed her to use her own experiences. The children were adapting to school, and Aiden in particular was recovering from the events of that day by regularly talking with the school psychologist. The days continued where he would ask, "Dad, doing bad things wasn't my fault, right?" But he was gradually coming to understand. As she was making tea in the kitchen, the doorbell rang. When she opened it, Richard was standing there. He smiled, holding a small potted plant. "A housewarming gift," he said. "I thought something that grows would be perfect for a new beginning." Caroline invited him in. Surprisingly, a friendship had developed with Richard after the cancelled engagement. Both were hurt during the first few weeks, but one day he invited her for coffee, and a conversation began. "Thank you for telling me the truth that day," he said. "It was painful, but much better than building a life on lies." While drinking coffee in the living room, Richard said, "Aiden is truly a brave child. He didn't take photos, but became suspicious from adult conversations and tried to find evidence. You're a wonderful mother to have raised a child with such insight." Caroline smiled. It was too precocious an experience for him, but he's overcoming it. Aiden and Emma were rebuilding their relationship with their father. Aiden in particular struggled to understand his father's betrayal. He sometimes had nightmares about the day he showed the tablet photos. Caroline was teaching her children that people make mistakes, but that's not everything. Thanks to therapy, Aiden was gradually beginning to enjoy weekends with his father. "I'm starting to understand that Dad really loves me," he said one day. "But why can't Mom and Dad be together?" Caroline patiently answered such questions. One day, while looking at social media, she discovered that Jason had posted a photo with another woman. There was a rumor that Vanessa had left town and moved to another office. Their relationship seemed to have collapsed quickly. December, Christmas Eve. Caroline was gazing at the fireplace, reflecting on the past 6 months. It had been a difficult journey, but she and her children were gradually healing. The doorbell rang. When she opened it, Vanessa was standing there. She looked thin and tired, with remorse in her eyes. "Do you have time to talk?" Vanessa asked in a low voice. "I broke up with Jason. It wasn't just me. Everything was a mistake." Caroline hesitated for a moment before opening the door wider. "The children will be happy," she said. "It's a special day, come in." As Vanessa entered, Aiden appeared in the hallway. At first, he looked surprised, but soon gave a small wave. "Merry Christmas, Auntie." The answer to the question, "What is a real family?" is complex. It's not just about blood ties, but about trust, honesty, and sometimes forgiveness. Aiden's courageous action taught them the importance of relationships based on truth rather than falsehood. Rebuilding a family is not an easy path, but they had taken the first step on that journey. The Wilson family's white 2-story house stood quietly in the lush suburban neighborhood of Boston. November morning had arrived, with fallen leaves accumulating in the front yard, signaling the end of autumn and the coming of winter. Deborah stood by the window, resting both hands on her heavily pregnant belly as she took slow, deep breaths. For her, this pregnancy was a miracle after 7 years of fertility treatments. After numerous failures and moments of despair, this baby was conceived just when she had nearly given up hope. Every morning, Deborah offered prayers of gratitude for this precious life. "Mom, look at my science project." Lily's cheerful voice echoed from the living room. Deborah slowly descended the stairs and gazed at the solar system model her 8-year-old daughter proudly displayed. The project, with its accurate planetary placement and proportional sizes, reflected Lily's delicate sensibility and intellectual curiosity. "It's wonderful, Lily. You've really paid attention to every detail," Deborah smiled, gently stroking her daughter's brown curls. Lily looked pleased that her mother had praised her work. She excelled in school, with teachers recognizing her particular talents in science and art. She had a vivid imagination and occasionally surprised people with her mature behavior. "Are you going to show it to Dad? Will he be home late?" At Lily's question, Deborah's expression clouded momentarily. Her husband Michael worked as a sales manager at a medical equipment manufacturer and had become increasingly busy lately. He traveled frequently, spending less and less time at home. "Dad said he has an important meeting with clients, so he'll be late today. But you can definitely show him tomorrow morning," Deborah spoke gently to her daughter, though small worries swirled inside her. Michael had been noticeably tired lately, with family conversations becoming less frequent.
Can you imagine making $10,000 a month just from YouTube, all from home? That's exactly what I did with Reddit stories. No face, no voice. Check the link in the description if you're curious.
He seemed genuinely happy about the birth of their second child, but there was something unsettled about him that concerned her. Deborah herself had worked for years as a library curator but had taken leave on her doctor's orders after entering the late stages of pregnancy. Being forced to rest at home was difficult for her active nature, but safely delivering the baby was her top priority. In the afternoon, Deborah prepared a light dinner for Lily while reviewing her pre-birth checklist. 1 week until her due date. The hospital bag was almost ready, and the newborn clothes were washed and folded. They had already decided on the name Thomas, after Michael's father. The sound of the front door opening was followed by the patter of Lily's feet rushing to greet someone. It seemed Michael had unexpectedly returned home early. "Dad! Look at my solar system." Lily's excited voice was followed by Michael's tired laugh. "That's amazing, Lily. You really have talent." Deborah emerged from the kitchen to welcome her husband. Michael's face showed signs of fatigue, his tie was loosened, and his shirt collar was wrinkled. He approached his wife, smiling at her large belly, and gave her a light kiss. The meeting ended earlier than expected. "How are you feeling?" "I'm fine. My back hurts a little, but the doctor says that's normal." That night, after Lily had gone to bed, the couple relaxed in the living room watching television. Michael put his arm around Deborah's shoulder and buried his face in her hair. "Deborah, I'm truly happy I met you." Deborah was slightly surprised by this sudden sentimental remark. Michael then began discussing plans for after the birth. His parents lived far away and would have difficulty visiting right after the delivery, and Deborah's parents couldn't travel long distances due to health reasons. They concluded that their friend Carol would be their most reliable support. Late that night, Deborah suddenly woke to intense pain. Labor had begun, a full week before her due date. Michael was scheduled to leave for a 2-day business trip the next morning but quickly began preparing. "I'll call Carol," Deborah said, fighting through the pain. "You should go on your trip. This might take a while." Michael looked hesitant but eventually agreed to Deborah's suggestion. Carol arrived promptly and would take Deborah to the hospital. Before leaving, Lily, with half-sleepy eyes, said in a small voice, "Mom, Dad, please come back soon with the baby." By the time they reached the hospital, the contractions were coming closer together. The delivery seemed to be progressing faster than expected. Carol contacted the hospital and informed Michael of the situation. After intense pain and a long labor, Deborah gave birth to a healthy boy, Thomas Wilson. The tiny life breathed quietly in her exhausted arms. A day after giving birth, Deborah lay quietly in her hospital bed. Postpartum fatigue and pain still lingered throughout her body, but the presence of little Thomas sleeping in the bassinet beside her provided comfort. Morning light streamed through the window, announcing the start of a new day. The door was knocked on, and Michael entered with a bouquet of flowers. He had returned immediately from his business trip after receiving news of the birth and rushed to his wife and son. "Deborah, you did so well. He's perfect." Michael gently picked up Thomas and gazed at him in admiration. However, Deborah sensed something odd about Michael's behavior. He seemed happy about his son, but he appeared restless, occasionally glancing toward the hallway. "Is something bothering you?" When Deborah asked, Michael hastily shook his head. "No, nothing. I'm just waiting for a call from the office. They're still contacting me despite the situation. I'm sorry." His explanation was reasonable, but Deborah's intuition told her otherwise. Their conversation was interrupted by a nurse entering the room. She wore a name tag that read, Rachel, and began checking on Deborah's condition with a bright smile. "How are you feeling this morning, Mrs. Wilson? Has the pain subsided?" Rachel checked Deborah's blood pressure, giving Michael a friendly smile. Michael merely nodded briefly to her before quickly averting his eyes. "It's a little better, thank you," Deborah replied. Rachel checked the 4 and handed Deborah a pill. "This is a painkiller prescribed by the doctor. Please take it with water." After Deborah took the medication, Rachel nodded with satisfaction, made some notes, and left the room. Michael followed, saying he needed to make a work call. Alone, Deborah was suddenly overcome with intense drowsiness. The painkiller seemed too strong. She tried to resist, but her eyelids grew heavy, and soon she fell into a deep sleep. When she awoke, a different nurse was in the room, holding Thomas. "Oh, you're awake. The baby was hungry, so I've been holding him." Deborah looked at the clock. It was past noon. She had slept for 4 hours. A normal painkiller shouldn't have made her sleep so long. "The medication seems to have had a strong effect on me," Deborah said, her head still foggy. "Yes, Rachel noted that in your chart. We'll adjust the dosage next time," the nurse said, handing the baby to Deborah. That afternoon, Deborah felt another change in her condition. This time it was sudden nausea and heart palpitations. She pressed the nurse call button, and Rachel appeared immediately. "What's wrong?" "I feel sick, and my heart is beating fast." Rachel took her blood pressure again and placed a hand on her forehead. "You might have a slight fever. Temporary fevers after childbirth aren't uncommon. I'll adjust the medication in your 4." She changed the 4 bag and made another note about Deborah's condition. As Rachel left the room, Deborah saw her take out a mobile phone and send a message to someone. In the evening, Carol brought Lily to visit. Lily's eyes sparkled when she first saw her little brother. "Mom, Thomas is so tiny." Deborah gently embraced her daughter and kissed her hair. "Yes, he is. But he'll grow bigger and bigger. I hope he becomes as smart as you." Carol looked at Deborah with concern. "You look pale. Are you all right?" Deborah told her about the changes in her condition and how the medication seemed too strong. Carol frowned. "That's strange. Shouldn't you talk to your doctor about it?" Just then, Rachel entered the room again. She showed an overly friendly attitude toward Lily. "Oh, you must be Lily. I've heard so much about you from your mother. What a smart girl you are." Deborah was confused. She had never mentioned Lily to Rachel. Lily herself clearly felt uncomfortable and moved closer to her mother. "I don't know this nurse," Lily whispered to Deborah. Rachel, seeming not to notice, said, "It's medication time," and offered another pill. Deborah eyed the pill suspiciously but didn't want to cause a scene in front of Carol and Lily. She took the pill and waited for Rachel to leave. "Carol, don't you think there's something strange about that nurse?" Carol agreed. Yes, it was unnatural that she knew Lily's name. Lily left the room briefly, saying she wanted to get some water. When she returned, her expression was dark, as if she wanted to say something. When Carol excused herself to buy some food from the cafeteria, leaving Deborah and Lily alone. Lily approached her mother's bed and said in a low voice, "Mom, I've seen that nurse before with Dad." Deborah's heart jumped. "What do you mean?" 2 weeks ago, Dad picked me up from school and took me for ice cream. I saw Dad and that woman talking at an outside table. They both looked serious." Deborah was speechless. Michael had said he would be working late that day. Lily had no reason to lie. That evening, after Michael's brief visit, Deborah heard him leave the room. However, he didn't immediately walk away down the hallway. Instead, she heard Michael talking quietly with someone in the corridor. She couldn't make out what was said, but it was definitely a woman's voice. That night, Deborah couldn't sleep. Anxiety and doubt occupied her mind. The next morning, Deborah gazed at the sunlight streaming through the window, nursing her restless thoughts. She had awakened several times during the night and hadn't slept well. In the bassinet next to her, Thomas breathed peacefully. Feeling the fragility and preciousness of this small life, Deborah reflected on what Lily had told her yesterday. "I saw Dad with that nurse." Suspicions about Michael were eating away at her heart. She had sensed changes in his attitude before the birth, but she never imagined he might be involved with another woman, especially one who was her nurse. Deborah felt a headache coming on. The morning vital check was performed by a different nurse. She explained that Rachel would be on duty in the afternoon and checked Deborah's condition before leaving. The 4 was still running, but the painkiller dosage seemed to have been reduced, as Deborah's head felt clearer. In the morning, Deborah received a visit from her attending physician. The doctor seemed satisfied with her recovery but was concerned about the fever and nausea. "Let's do another blood test, just to be safe." After the doctor left, Deborah picked up her mobile phone and hesitantly called Michael. He answered after the 3rd ring. "Deborah, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell?" "No, I'm fine," Deborah tried to sound calm. "I just wanted to know if you could come with Lily when she visits today." On the other end of the line, Michael could be heard taking a sharp breath. "That's difficult today. I have an important meeting." "I understand," Deborah couldn't hide her disappointment. "Talk to you later, then." After hanging up, Deborah sank deep into her bed, staring at the ceiling. Was her intuition correct? Or was this paranoia due to her postpartum mental state? At lunchtime, Rachel appeared. She acted as cheerfully as ever, but Deborah noticed that her eyes weren't smiling. Rachel brought the meal and another pill. "This is an additional antibiotic prescribed by the doctor. It's to prevent infection." Deborah stared at the pill. She hadn't heard the doctor give such instructions during the morning rounds. "Did my doctor say this?" Rachel hesitated for a moment. "Yes, of course. It's recorded in your chart." Deborah took the pill in her hand but didn't swallow it. "I'll take it later. I want to eat first." Rachel briefly showed a dissatisfied expression but quickly composed herself. "All right. I'll check back later." After Rachel left, Deborah hid the pill in the bedside table drawer. Her feeling that something was wrong was growing stronger. Around 2 in the afternoon, Carol brought Lily. Lily clutched a small bouquet and rushed to her mother. Deborah embraced her daughter tightly. "Mom, are you okay?" Lily looked up at her mother's face with concern. "Yes, I'm fine," Deborah smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Carol picked up Thomas and, while rocking him, said, "Deborah, I'm going to buy some drinks." "What would you like, Lily?" "Apple juice." Lily answered enthusiastically. When Carol left the room, Lily's expression changed. She moved closer to her mother's bed and said in a low voice, "Mom, I saw that nurse again today. She was talking with Dad in the hallway." Deborah's heart began to race. "When?" "Just now. When we arrived at the hospital. They didn't notice us." Lily's eyes reflected fear. Mom, she had a scary face. Deborah squeezed her daughter's hand. Lily, what do you mean? Lily moved even closer to her mother and said in an almost inaudible voice, she told Dad, we'll do it today. Dad said, not yet. Mom, is she going to do something? Deborah caught her breath. Children's intuition is sharp. Lily had sensed something. Deborah herself had felt something unnatural about Rachel's behavior, the overly strong effect of the medicine, knowing Lily's name, and this morning's suspicious antibiotic. Suddenly, voices could be heard from the hallway. Lily quickly stood up and listened toward the window. Then, with a determined expression, she quietly began to draw the curtains in the hospital room. Lily, what are you doing? Without turning around, Lily said, Mom, she's coming. After closing the curtains, Lily rushed to her mother's bed and, with a small but serious expression, said, Mom, get under the bed right now. Deborah sensed her daughter's urgency and fear. Lily's eyes held a wisdom and determination beyond her years. Deborah acted without hesitation. She gently picked up Thomas, and dragging the four stand with her, stood beside the bed. Lily, you come too. She first knelt on the floor and, still holding the baby, carefully slid under the bed. Her postpartum body still felt pain, but she ignored it. Lily quickly crawled in beside her mother. As the two held their breath under the bed, they heard the hospital room door open. Quiet footsteps approached. Deborah gently rocked Thomas to prevent him from crying, while holding her breath. Lily clung to her mother's arm, trembling with fear. The footsteps stopped near the bed. There was a sound of someone touching the pillow on the bed. Where did she go? A woman's voice muttered. It was Rachel. Deborah's heart pounded violently. She suddenly felt Lily's small hand cover her mouth. Lily was warning her mother to stay quiet. Smart girl. Deborah nodded slightly and gently squeezed Lily's hand. Rachel seemed to have pressed the nurse call button. The patient is missing, they heard her say. Just then, another set of footsteps entered the room. Heavier ones, belonging to a man. What are you doing? Where's Deborah? It was Michael's voice. Rachel's voice came back, low and dangerously resonant. Your obstacle will soon be gone. With just one injection. What are you talking about? Michael's voice was disturbed. We planned this, Michael. You and me, and the baby. We don't need your wife. Rachel's voice had a tinge of madness. The baby will be ours. Deborah was frozen with terror. In her arms, Thomas began to stir. Deborah kissed the baby even more gently, praying he would stay quiet. Lily's face was pale, her eyes filled with fear, but she bravely remained still, trying to protect her mother and brother. From under the bed, Deborah could see Rachel's white nursing shoes and Michael's leather shoes. They were standing face to face. Michael's feet stepped backward. What are you saying? I only said I wanted to break up. I don't intend to hurt anyone. A ray of light shone in Deborah's heart. While Michael had certainly been having an affair with Rachel, he didn't seem to be participating in this crazed plan. However, that hardly changed the current situation. Rachel had a syringe with a lethal dose of drugs, and she was looking for Deborah. You promised. You said we would be together. Rachel's voice trembled with anger. Deborah looked at Lily's face. Along with fear, there was determination in her daughter's eyes. Lily gently pointed to her mother's arm, showing the watch-like nurse call button attached to it. Deborah understood and nodded slightly. It was a race against time. From their limited view under the bed, they could see Rachel's and Michael's feet still facing each other. You promised me a future together. Rachel's voice was growing louder. If she were gone, we could be a perfect family. Are you crazy? Michael's voice shook with anger. I only said I wanted to end our affair. I never talked about hurting Deborah or Lily or the baby. Under the bed, Deborah stiffened at hearing her name. Beside her, Lily silently wept. Deborah gently embraced her daughter, trying to encourage her. Thomas remained with his eyes closed, barely breathing. Break up. Break up with me. Rachel's voice turned cold and sharp. Didn't you tell me things weren't going well with your wife? That you didn't want a second child? I did say that. But it was from pre-birth anxiety. The moment I saw Thomas, my thinking changed. Michael's voice had regained its composure. Rachel, calm down. Nothing irreversible has happened yet. Put down that syringe, and let's talk. Deborah had complex feelings about her husband's words. She couldn't forgive his infidelity, but at least now he was trying to protect his family. Rachel's foot stepped forward. It's too late, Michael. I've planned everything. Deborah's illness, the overdose of medication, it's all my doing. I've prepared it so no one will question if she dies from complications. Michael could be heard gasping. Are you sane? Love sometimes drives people mad. Rachel's voice had regained a strange calmness. If you love me, you should understand. This is for our future. Deborah felt the blood in her body freezing. Rachel was completely insane. And she was desperately thinking of a way to escape this situation. She had pressed the nurse call button, but how long would it take for hospital staff to arrive? Rachel, you're sick. You need help. Michael's feet stepped backward. I will never allow you to hurt Deborah. So. Rachel's voice echoed coldly. Then you're an obstacle too. Footsteps moved, and it seemed a struggle had begun between them. Deborah couldn't see what was happening, but she heard something fall to the floor. Michael let out a pained sound. Rachel, stop. Lily's hand gripped Deborah's arm tightly. Deborah sensed her daughter's terror. She was trembling with fear herself, but she had to appear strong in front of Lily. Just then, the hospital room door was flung open. Is everything all right? The nurse called. Another nurse's voice could be heard. Then, a moment of silence, followed by a surprised voice. Rachel? What are you doing? Don't interfere. Rachel shouted. Security. Come quickly. The nurse called out into the hallway. Amid the confusion, multiple footsteps entered the room. Deborah held Lily tightly and protected Thomas. She has a syringe, someone shouted. After some commotion, the room suddenly fell silent. It's safe. We've restrained her, a man's voice announced. Deborah took a deep breath and made a decision. Lily, it's okay now. Let's come out. She slowly crawled out from under the bed. Holding Thomas in her arms and leading Lily by the hand, she stood up, met by the surprised expressions of everyone in the room. There were 2 nurses, 2 security staff, and Michael in the room. Michael's face had scratch marks, and his shirt was disheveled. Rachel was being restrained by security, struggling wildly. A syringe had fallen to the floor from her hand. Deborah. Michael was stunned. Under the bed. I hid with Mom, Lily said in a small voice. I was scared of that woman. Seeing the 2 of them, Rachel began struggling more violently. You ruined everything. We could have been happy. Security firmly restrained her and removed her from the room. The hospital administrator was called, and the institution was in an uproar over the gravity of the situation. Deborah, Lily, and Thomas were moved to another room. The police were called, and the syringe Rachel had been carrying was collected as evidence. Emergency tests show the contents of the syringe were a lethal dose of morphine, the hospital's medical safety manager explained to Deborah. Rachel Collins was hired by our hospital 2 months ago, but we've discovered she falsified her credentials. She apparently has a history of psychiatric hospitalization and caused similar problems at another hospital. Stroking Lily's hair with trembling hands, Deborah asked, "But why was I targeted?" According to the police's initial investigation, Collins had a brief relationship with your husband and gathered information about you and your family in the process, the manager explained apologetically. She arranged to be assigned to you and was targeting your delivery. Michael stood outside Deborah's new hospital room door. His face showed deep regret and shame. Deborah saw him but said nothing. "Let me talk to you." Michael entered the room. "I'll explain everything." "Lily, could you wait outside for a bit?" Deborah said gently to her daughter. Lily looked anxiously at her mother but nodded and left the room. "I met Rachel 3 months ago," Michael began in a heavy tone. "It was just a temporary mistake. I tried to end it a month ago, but she wouldn't accept it. However, I never thought she was this deranged." "I can't believe it," Deborah's voice was cold. "Your reckless behavior put our lives in danger." "I know. I don't expect to be forgiven," Michael bowed his head. "But for Lily and Thomas's sake, please let me try again." Deborah gazed out the window. Her heart was filled with the pain of betrayal, but at the same time, she felt deep gratitude that their lives had been saved by Lily's courage and quick thinking. "I need time to think," she finally said. "Right now, I just want to focus on the children." Michael nodded silently and left the room. 3 months later, Deborah sat on the small porch of her new home, watching Lily play in the garden. Baby Thomas slept peacefully in her arms. The new house was smaller than their previous one, but the warm sunshine and quiet environment surrounded by greenery were ideal for healing their wounded hearts. Rachel Collins had been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and delusional disorder following a psychiatric evaluation and was confined to a state facility. Police investigations revealed that she had greatly exaggerated her brief relationship with Michael, even fantasizing about marriage and family planning. More surprisingly, she had caused similar problems at hospitals where she had previously worked but had concealed her record through credential falsification. "Mom! Look, a butterfly!" Lily called from the garden, stretching her small arms toward the sky. Deborah smiled. Lily was receiving psychological counseling twice a week but was gradually regaining her original brightness with the resilience typical of children. Though occasional anxious expressions remained, she had developed a pride in being a little hero. The divorce proceedings with Michael had been completed last month. He had quit his job and moved to a city on the West Coast. Child support was paid regularly, but he didn't come to see Thomas. It was arranged that he would talk to Lily once a month by phone. With the help of a lawyer, Deborah had successfully obtained sole custody of the children. Through Carol's introduction, Deborah had started working 3 days a week at the local library. The limited working hours gave her plenty of time to spend with her children and an opportunity to build relationships in the new community. The library's storytelling sessions had become her small joy. "Would you like some tea?" Carol appeared from the back door, holding 2 mugs. Since the incident, she had become Deborah's strong supporter, often visiting on weekends to help with housework and childcare. "Thank you," Deborah accepted the mug. "I couldn't have recovered without you." "Don't say that," Carol sat beside her. "You're stronger than you think. And so is Lily." Deborah gazed at her daughter running around in the garden. She was truly brave. She saved our lives. Life is unpredictable and sometimes cruel. Deborah thought about the true meaning of family while contemplating this. It's not just about blood ties, but about bonds where people protect and trust each other. Through their great ordeal, a stronger bond had formed between her, Lily, and Thomas than before. "Mom!" Lily came running up. "Is Thomas awake? Can I hold him?" Deborah smiled and handed the small baby to her daughter. Lily carefully held her brother and gently kissed his forehead. "I'll always protect you," Lily whispered to her brother. As Deborah watched her 2 children, she felt hopeful about their future journey together, despite the uncertainties of the road ahead.